All right. Can everybody hear me okay? I thought there was a video. I guess I'm the video. So thank you, ladies, for coming out today. Well, and gentlemen, appreciate you. My name is Shannon Curran. I work at Fortinet. I'm a VP. It didn't come easily. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But the topic today that I selected was about work-life balance and how we can strike that happy medium between working really hard and being career-focused, but also enjoying life to the maximum at the same time, right? So a little bit about myself. I have been in cybersecurity now for 20 years, 23 years total if you count the IT, pure IT segment of it. It has been a journey at Fortinet, so I didn't start out clearly as VP. I started in different roles, but always in cybersecurity, again, for the past 20 years. Mostly in Europe, LATAM in the last 2 years. I have had the immense pleasure of working with Canada, Canadian customers, Canadian channels, Canadian partners, and it's really, really been an amazing experience. So a little bit of the agenda. We all can read here, so I'm just not going to go through my own bio, right? What we're going to talk about today in this order is the following. Women in the IT world, specifically cybersecurity within the IT world as well, how we can be career-oriented. I always was. I know every person is their own universe. Not everybody is of the same make and mold, but I was a very career-oriented and continue to be a very career-oriented woman within the field. We're going to talk about leadership, what it takes to be a leader, how one can evolve into a leader within this context. Loving Canada as well. So I was born in the Midwest, so I like it here. I think in general, people are pretty nice. And then work-life balance. We're going to talk about that, how to get that happy medium through and through. I was going to leave it for a little Q&A, maybe for 5 to 10 minutes at the very end, if you guys are interested. But I'm going to be around here all day today, so feel free to stop by the Fortinet booth. I'm going to stop by the Career Expo as people show up who are looking for different opportunities, internships, etc. Happy to answer any questions there. So let's start out. Women in the IT world. So one of the things I've been exposed to pretty much through and through in my professional career is a lot of mentoring and coaching. And one of the things that my executive coach talks about a lot is playing to our strengths and strength-based coaching. You can always look at yourself, get 360 feedback from your peers, your family, anybody. And you can look, this is what I'm really good at, and these are my weak points. And some coaches say, well, let's focus on your weak points. But there's a lot of coaches out there that say, no, let's focus on your strengths. What is it that you do really, really well? So I am a very fierce and faithful proponent of strength-based coaching. Actually, everybody who works with me knows their strengths. We go to Gallup, they take this test, and it gives them their top 5 strengths. We'll go into that in the coaching and the career-oriented stuff a little bit later. But again, this is from the World Economic Forum. Fortinet is a proud participant of the bylines, any and every conference that we do. But what they say is that today, tackling the biggest challenges, ranging from climate change to economic uncertainty, requires innovation, and this is true. That innovation will require new skills. So these are the business top 10 skill priorities for 2027. They have them broken down into cognitive skills, self-efficacy, technical skills, and then working with others. When I took a look at this skill set that they're saying is going to be for 2027, my comment was, wait a minute, it just so happens that half of these skills are ones that women are almost innately and incredibly equipped to handle. Look at this. Creative thinking. Oh, we have a ton on our plates all the time. I have to be creative daily to figure out how I'm going to get through the day. Leadership, social influence, resilience, flexibility, agility, These are things that are us: curiosity, lifelong learning, motivation, self-awareness, right? These are things, well, empathy and active listening. These are skill sets that they're describing that a lot of us from, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, they're kind of built in, right? So this puts us in a unique skill set area to be able to totally rock it by 2027 with what they're saying as far as the job market and these skill sets. So for me, it's very exciting. I think it's exciting for us to recognize what they're diagnosing for the future and the fact that we can play really, really well into this. Regarding an inclusive workplace, I think it's also very important that we have this discussion. Just out of curiosity, this is also from the World Economic Forum. How many jobs will be created in the next 5 years, driven by new tech and the green transition? Does anybody want to take a stab at the number? How many? Show of hands? You guys got to call it a number. I just can't move on with the presentation. It's going to make for a long morning, guys. Yeah, a lot. You want to, okay, it's millions. You want to tell me how many millions? 3? 5? Anybody else? It's higher. 8? 10? 400? All right. We have somebody brave here. 69 million jobs will be created in the next 5 years, right? Look at the top 10 fastest growing jobs. Not a surprise. Number 1, AI and machine learning specialists. Sustainability, business intelligence. Look at number 4. Anytime I have the chance to talk with college kids, about to graduate kids, I'm like, you guys want a job when you come out of college? Do something related to cybersecurity. It could be a master's, right? And I tell people, not all of it has to do with the nitty-gritty technical aspect. There's compliance, there's legislation, there's a ton of aspects around cybersecurity that you can come out and be very, very employable, right? FinTech engineers, data analysts, scientists, robotics, big data, agriculture, equipment operators, and digital transformation specialists. That's top 10. And that skill set and knowing where you're headed, if you want to be employable, anybody can kind of connect those dots and pick really, really solid career paths. Hi guys, come on in. We're just getting started. No worries. So, 69 million. I have another question for everybody. Also, World Economic Forum. How many organizations, we're talking about some good stuff here, have programs in place currently that focus on hiring women? Anybody want to take a stab again at this? 80%. 80. Okay, very good. 80. Anybody else want to take a guess? 45, 50? Okay, first one. You're 79%. If I had like some jelly beans, I would totally give them to you as a prize. That was good. That was spot on. You would have won like the game, right? You would have totally won, right? It was just right under. So, but look at this. 79% have inclusivity programs that are including women. Now, it goes down from there as you talk minorities, special skill set, etc. But I think it's important. You guys, 79% of 69 million, that is a lot of jobs that we should be actively going after, right? So I think it's important to set the stage with inclusive workplaces. There's a lot of organizations, including Fortinet, that have programs in place to attract from very young ages, from college. We're at a lot of career trade shows, a lot of college trade shows, to try to get that talent into our organization as soon as humanly possible, right? And especially with women. Go ahead.
Just curious, do you see any data on women who are changing careers?
That is absolutely wonderful. I saw a big impact when COVID hit. A lot of people had to bow out respectfully, and a lot of those were my colleagues, women. It was typically women who had to go and do the e-learning with the kids. Some of them have returned, some of them have not. And upon return, some of them are not in the same level of role that they were. So it was almost like they had to hit a little bit of a reset button. So that's a very good point. And I've had also, let's just call a spade, maternity. Look, Everybody's built differently. I was back to work after 3 weeks. And my boss was like, no, you need to just do some reports at home. I was like, but come on. But others, I have some colleagues that have, unfortunately, because they're incredibly talented, that have left, and they'll be back eventually. I just don't know when, right? But we do have a lot of very ambitious, intelligent, smart ladies that are coming out of college, and Fortinet does have a lot of positions open to attract that type of talent. Love the question, though. Very, very good question. So we're almost done with Jeopardy, I promise. So cybersecurity in the IT world, navigating the demands. There is a global shortage of how many IT security professionals currently in the world? Anybody want to take a guess? 10,000? 1 million? Anybody else? No? 4 million cybersecurity professionals. Now, my 2 cents in opinion, this may go down by 30 to 35% with the inclusion and applied use of AI, machine learning and things like that, specifically AI, to take over the more menial tasks. AI is a different conversation. I'm not sure if there's a workshop today, but if there is, I'll sit on it. But I think that'll be lightly impacted with the use of AI more readily within organizations. However, it is still a big number. And I always like to talk about this number when I'm speaking with career-oriented professionals that are looking to change, that are recently graduated from college, because this is a good industry to be in. And when I talk with university kids, adults, I say, look at this. It's an employment ticket, really, to get into organizations using cybersecurity and that knowledge in that field. I got in quite by accident. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, this is a Fortinet stat. What percentage of Fortinet employees in the Americas, which is Canada, the US, and all of Latin America, essentially the Western Hemisphere, and I don't want to exclude the Caribbean. What percentage of Fortinet employees in all roles in the Americas are women? 20%. Who said that? Very good. This row's on fire. Well, you're going to see why I say that in a second. Anybody else? Want to take a guess? 21%. You guys are on fire. Seriously, the price is right today. You guys both got under by 1. I'm like, man, okay, they take everything. So essentially, in this I'm going to go a little bit into me. The positive. I absolutely stumbled into cybersecurity in 2003. I worked in an IT position, inside sales, selling gear from a very famous networking vendor, right? But it was an inside sales position. And I had even stumbled into that. That's a longer story. But I was made redundant 2 days before I was going to sign my mortgage. And I was just praying the bank wasn't going to call them up. But anyway, because I had some friends and a guy said, hey, there's this new company that they want to come into, I was in Spain, they want to come into the Spanish market, but I had to take a little risk because during the first year, I was 100% commission-based. That's kind of scary, right? When you don't know and absolutely everything that you're working for is 100% commission, it's a little scary. I did always, and fortunately for me, one of the things on my Strength Finder is that I'm a very sociable person. So I had built some relationships around, and I use that, not in a bad way. It's because I like it, but I like to connect with people, and that has ultimately helped me in my career to forge my next steps, relationships. What I do currently is to build bridges and relationships with the largest customers in the world to try to go in there and help them with their security needs. Obviously, at some point being a little self-centered and wanting them to work with Fortinet. Not on everything, that's fine, but I try to make them see the advantages of working with us. I have a work hard, play hard approach to work, as do most of my colleagues, which makes it nice. We work really, really hard, but we're also not afraid to go and enjoy ourselves, on a boat or with customers. We do a lot of really, really fun things. Look, guys, we spend as many hours as work as we do in our bed. Who has a crappy mattress here. I don't have a crappy mattress because I know I spend a lot of my life there. Why would I find myself in a not so nice employer when I spend a big chunk of my time there? I've also found that a good sense of humor helped me with men. I cannot even tell you the amount of times, and still today, where I'm the only woman in the room. But at this point in time, I think I'm so desensitized to it, I don't even care. I almost imagine them with wigs on as well. Doesn't matter, right? We're gonna talk about that a little bit later too, right? So good sense of humor. And my peers, when you're in a job and you wake up every day and you look around you and you're like, I'm surrounded by geniuses. And the cool thing is they tell me the same, right? I don't necessarily always see it in myself, but you have that, my colleagues will tell me basically the same thing. So I'm incredibly fortunate. The negative, when I started, not here at Fortinet, don't worry, I wouldn't do that. But I did have a 9-month period where I was harassed for 9 months that totally stunk, right? But I stuck to my guns. I didn't go anywhere. The guy ended up leaving. I don't want to talk crap about anybody because he's not here anymore, like on this planet. But like he's dead. But that was not nice. And if anybody's ever been through an experience like that, that was a big deal for me, because that was one of those points that I'm like, yeah. And from then on, honestly, I've always kept an arm's length, so to speak, from men in the industry or in my workplace, because it can get into some pretty rocky terrain if you allow that. I was young, I was naive, I was pretty stupid, I was new to the field, and that happened. So it has a demanding schedule. I had extra inserts in my passport, filled it twice over, go in there before my passport was even set to expire. Lots of time, lots of travel. A little bit less now with the family, but that's how I started. Also, trial by fire. I had no idea what I was doing. I read a lot. I studied a lot. When I got into the IT industry, they handed me this huge pile of books, and they're like, okay, this is your new job. Study up, babe. So, but on the sales perspective, I really didn't know about the methodology, best practices. I had to learn that. And thankfully, I also had a lot of mentors. And as I got into Fortinet, they also came in with some coaching, some sales coaches, soft skills coaches, executive coaches as well. So I think those three are very, very important as you move forward in your career. There was a little bit of risk. I was in a different country. I had to make it work. There was like, when I left and said, I'm going to Spain, Mom, Dad, thanks for the college education, I'm out. They were like, don't call us asking for money. That was the only thing they said. So those first few years, true story, I still have the papers that I did monthly where I wrote down, if I bought a pack of gum, I wrote that down. If I bought whatever, a metro ticket for €80, well, it was in pesetas back in the day, it wasn't even in euros, I wrote it down. So, and I was teaching English, I had my stuff, but I had to make it work, which is why it was really scary when I was made redundant in 2003, 2 days before signing my mortgage. And I promise, I was praying that the bank wasn't going to call the company, because then everything would have gone backwards. But anyway, so within that context, how does one decide, this is what I want, this is where I'm going to play? I've always been incredibly career-oriented. You'll see a quote here soon, but the power of knowing what you want and visualizing that outcome. Does anybody here do visualization, vision boards? I have a vision board. Did one before I came to Miami. I update it periodically. It's a really cool exercise. Well, first of all, you feel like a kid because you go through a bunch of magazine and cut out pictures that you think are really cool, right? But then you just put it on something with some inspiring words, and you put it in a very visible place. Well, I would do that from a very young age. I mean, it could have been from large speaking opportunities to where I envision myself in the future. Guys, if you see it, if you taste it, if you smell it, you're gonna have a higher probability of manifesting it. right? Seriously. I've seen it. It works. Love what you do or change direction. I think that's an important thing. Don't stay stagnant. There's no reason. There's a lot of jobs and opportunities out there. If you feel that this isn't your calling, before I got into sales, one of my majors out of the two was psychology, and I was like the statistical genius, and they would bring me in and da-da-da-da. But man, after a year of working in a lab, I was like, oh no, this is not gonna happen. And so that's when I got a double major, and I was like, I'm out, I'm going to Spain, my last year of college, but I loved it so much that I stayed. And that was when my parents were like, what's your plan? It's like, oh, what's a plan? I don't need a plan, I'm just leaving. And that's like, good, but just don't call us asking for money. So that was, the prelude to what I was saying. Also, looking for a company that provides extensive coaching, guidance, and support. They exist. So what I got out of my executive coaching, the little snippets that I was exposed to, now every account manager in Canada and in Latin America has the same exposure to the content that I found was relevant from our executive coach, from our sales coach, and from our soft skills coach, right? I think it's a very, very important thing to start including coaching and mentoring very early on in people's careers. And that's something that Fortinet definitely provides. So one thing I do want to talk about here, since it is predominantly women, is imposter syndrome. Guys can get it too, but the fact is that it affects 90% of women more than men. So does anybody know what imposter syndrome is? Okay, good, some people. Let me give you guys a quick breakdown. So when you're looking in the mirror and you're thinking, what the heck am I doing here? How did I get here? I shouldn't be here. This is just too beyond me, right? So how do we keep those sensations at bay? Well, first of all, number one, every successful person, call it an Oscar-winning actress, a VP, there is no escaping a good therapist, right? Just saying. Love mine. Kudos to her. But we talk about it. We go through. And there was an exercise. She was like, I want you to write down everything that you're responsible for. Everything that occurs, from making lunch to lunch boxes to tuition payments to your job to your 80-person plus team to sales, everything. I want you to write it down, right? And we looked at it later. She's like, you're leading the life of 4 people, right? So it's a way to put it in perspective. How much do you handle? Are you really doing the job of what 4 normal human beings are doing? Then you're not an imposter. It's just you're really friggin' good, right? But you have to look at yourself and recognize it, embrace it. Don't flee from it. And I sometimes think I'm having an imposter syndrome moment where I'm with a bunch of stunning individuals and I'm thinking, I shouldn't be here. That's the moment that you think, okay, that's negative self-talk. It's not true. So there are techniques to keep it at bay. But just saying, as you go up in your career, you may find times where you are looking around and thinking, this shouldn't have happened to me. I shouldn't be here. But it's fake. And another thing, it doesn't happen to guys. Well, 10% of the time. It normally happens to us, right? Just saying. But try to keep it at bay. There's mechanisms. Recognizing it as number one, right? That anxiety, negative self-talk, hates it when you call it out internally. So do that. And then learning not to care what others think of your goals, dreams, and ambitions. If I would have listened to my parents, to my friends that were saying, no, going to another country to live is totally crazy, you don't have a plan, it's asinine, I wouldn't be where I am today. Well, I could have in a parallel life gotten to some similar levels, I don't know. And if we watched that cool show that had all those parallel universes, maybe I would find out. But not to care. You do you. This is your life. This is your ride, right? I mean, if it's going to harm others, then obviously you got to be respectful. But the stuff where it's just people being critics, don't let it bother you. Don't let them dive into your mojo, because it's your mojo, right? And there's a lot of things that I likely wouldn't have done if I would have listened to even some of the people closest around me that were like, no, you're crazy. Don't do that. I'm like, yeah, but this is my life. So, and Fortinet is, let me go back here really quickly, always has pushed me into greater roles. Like, I think my boss at times has more confidence in myself, in me, than I had in myself. So, when I was made director, or when I was given a bigger territory, or when I was made VP, they're like, no, come on, you're doing this. You're doing this. We're putting you in here. You got all the qualifications. You're the bomb.com. You're going to rock it. So that's what they did. But they always push me into greater roles. So I want to talk about leadership. And this is also something that can happen to women. But perception is reality. And one of our coaches has this diagram where two people are looking at a number on the ground that's like a number 6. And one guy's, it's a number 6. And the other guy's, it's a number 9. Well, what we see, us, and what we perceive is our reality. So we have to keep that very much in mind when we're talking about things like a glass ceiling. I'll get to that in a second. But I'm of the opinion, and fortunately with the team that works around me, of aim high, always. Reason being, this is an old American Indian proverb. Aim at the sun and hit an eagle. Aim at an eagle and hit a rock. If you aim high and can also incorporate some of the techniques like visualization, include some mentoring and executive coaching, it can really get you on a fast track to move fast, right? So another thing is universal accountability. Anybody know what that term is? No? Also from one of our executive coaches, it's about taking ownership and responsibility of where you're at, of the decisions that you've made to lead to where you're at, and really not blaming anybody, not making excuses, not being in denial. There's a term that's called above the line and below the line. We use it a lot in Fortinet. And if you think about the boxing rules and regulations, you're never allowed to punch below the line, well, for obvious reasons, considering it's a man's sport. But what we refer to when somebody is going below the line, and we use it a lot in our executive meetings, it's when somebody is looking for excuses or a third party, or they don't even realize that a problem exists. That's below the line. Above the line, you know what it is? It's looking for solutions. It's recognizing that you're likely here because of certain decisions that you've likely made to bring you to a certain destination, but it's owning it. It's also recognizing what you can control, what you can influence, and what's outside of your control. Guys, guess what? The one thing that we can control, honestly, is ourselves. Everything else either goes into a bucket of you can influence it or you can't control it, right? So the realms where you need to play is the stuff you can control, yourself, what you do every day, what you study, who your friends are, who you hang out with, what jobs you apply for, right? How you go about your day. That's all controllable. And we can also influence a lot, you know, who's around us, how we behave. That's all stuff that we can influence. Guess what we can't control? Other people, elements, things that happen randomly. We can't control that. Right? So I think universal accountability is a great exercise. So take a snapshot of where you're at, own it, right? And the stuff that needs to be changed, you take accountability for it, and you make a plan to address it. That's what above the line is, right? I think it's a very important thing moving forward. I also want to talk about the glass ceiling and perception, because perception is reality. I think here, ladies and gentlemen, it's if you feel and think and believe that there's a glass ceiling, I guarantee you in 99% of the cases, you guys are going to find it, right? I never knew what a glass ceiling was. I had to look on Google the other day, actually, if you want to know the truth, because I never thought it existed, right? I just thought, okay, I'm here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it work for myself. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm going to study. I'm going to be applied. I'm going to work my 10 to 12-hour days or whatever it was and travel around the world and do everything that I feel is going to be necessary for my success. And nobody was artificially stopping me. I never viewed that, and that's probably why I just went, whoop, and it didn't care. But for everybody who's in here, if there is a perceived glass ceiling, you're most likely, again, going to manifest it. Just like we talked about the power of visualization and things like that. If that's living in your mind that you have this, ceiling or this barrier that's preventing you, you may inadvertently or unconsciously be behaving in a way that indicates that you really do have a glass ceiling, right? So be careful with that. I also want to share that, from my opinion, leaders are made. They're not born. No baby is born being a leader and saying, hey, nurse, come here. Hey, I'm hungry. No, they can have some personality characteristics that may make them more outgoing, right? But there are some really charismatic, there's some really good leaders that don't necessarily have that high social element to them, and they can still be millionaires, billionaires, lead huge companies. Whatever your parameters of success are, there's a lot of people with different traits altogether, but they were made. They were made over their life experiences. They were made because of their ambitions and dreams and getting them done. That's how they were made. They're not born. And then push your limits on a daily basis. And I love this quote: don't limit yourself. And really, the only way to define your limits is by going beyond them. How do you know what your stopping point is if you haven't gone beyond your stopping point? Right? So it's very, very important when you're doing the career to really push those limits, to see what they are, and then continue to push them even more. Right? So, loving Canada. I think Fortinet Canada is one of the most undersold elements possible here. I particularly love working here. Another question, I lied to you. Jeopardy is not over. We have a team of more than how many people today in Canada? This is all inclusive. Executive leadership, sales, marketing, engineering, support, and channel. Anybody want to take a guess of how many people we have in Canada today? 1,000, good. 10K, all right, that's an ambitious one. I like that. Anybody else? 1,500? Anybody else? All right, well, almost. We have 2,600 people here in Canada today, ladies and gentlemen, right? That's a big number. That's a big number. Nobody knows. When I got here 2 years ago, I was like, what? We should have this on every presentation or every conversation with a Canadian customer because we have some buku investments here, right? We're doing currently a $30 million investment to build a complete cybersecurity tech hub in Calgary. Our founder and CTO, Michael Z, he actually studied at the University of Manitoba. So we have two founders, two brothers. One got a US passport, studied at college in the States. He's our CEO currently. And the other got a Canadian passport, University of Manitoba, loves Canada to pieces. And because of all of this, big part of our R&D, all of our FortiGuard labs, 4 fully fledged data centers with SOC and NOC as a service, our EBC showrooms and laboratories in Burnaby, Ottawa, coming soon to a theater near you, our nice Toronto offices as well. So big footprint. And obviously we have the Fortinet Women's Network Canada. We have them all over the place. It's a top-down thing here at this company. When you have somebody that says, I want to be the biggest and most ethical cybersecurity company in the world, guess what? Everybody's going to be the biggest and most ethical that they can be. If you have a leader, our 2 leaders, that say, we want to include as many women, minorities, ethnic groups as possible, guess what? You're going to have a lot of women, minorities, and ethnic groups. We absolutely do. So it's a very top-down thing. We have people that are in charge of sustainability and inclusivity in our executive team that sit on our board. And they go through the numbers and make sure that we're not messing up as far as, What is the minority, the race, the women, and how do we get more of them? How do we attract more of these talent pools, right? So there are companies that have a big mission in place to make this happen, right? So this is why we're here. I've been career-oriented my whole life. I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm out. No. So I'm all about work-life balance. I'm all about taking the most lovely vacations. But if I'm going to leave everybody here with some messaging regarding work-life balance, which this is what the chat is about, you only live once. Just this week and last week, some people a guy I used to work with, guy I went to high school with, dead. I mean, it's just a biological reality. I don't mean to scare anybody, but the fact is your moment can come whenever. So you only live once. Act and wake up every day and act like this is your last day on the planet, because it might be, right? Those guys didn't know they were going. They didn't, guarantee you. One was an aneurysm. I know he didn't know he was going. But anyway, and they were young, right? So in those cases, it makes me reflect and think, am I doing everything every day to be the best at my work, to squeeze my kid and tell her I love her? Am I planning the stuff that's going to allow me to escape and do these kind of sessions with my wholeheartedness? And we're going to talk a little bit about some recommendations for literature and some other things that I would strongly suggest that the women here, and the men too, actually, you'll probably get a lot out of it, would read and absorb. One of the things I've found, don't suffer in silence. There's a lot of help out there. I think some of us, I'm pretty vocal. So when I've needed help in the past, I've definitely raised my hand and asked for it. I understand that not everybody's so forthcoming, but if you don't ask, people don't know. And there's a lot of people that find out that their colleagues have been suffering in silence for a long time, and they almost fall out of their chairs when they find out. It's almost like a grievance, because if they would have known, they could have been able to do some things. And that has to do with HR, with career development, with also women have a much greater fear of applying for roles that they perceive are out of their zone. Guess what? Guys don't effing care. They just are like, raw, steroids, testosterone, let's go for it. They don't care. They'll figure it out when they get there. We don't do that. We're more like, oh, I may not have this one skill, and oh, if they're going to ask me about it. But you can get coaching. I don't think my boss knows this, but I've prepped a lot of ladies before interviews with him. I look at his LinkedIn. This is what he likes. You know, you can talk about this kind of stuff. I don't dictate the interview for them, but I give them some good talking points. They were hired. So I mean, if you ask for help, you usually get it. And some of these ladies reached out and they're like, yeah, I got this important interview with one of your colleagues. I'm like, okay, let's do a quick webinar, whatever session, and we'll talk about it. So we go through all of this stuff, and usually they hit it home. I don't hit it home for them. I just give them some points. But I'm able to do that because they asked, right? So call it, coaching, cheating, whatever. I don't care. They're in. It doesn't matter. And they're rock stars. So I'd say find your happy place and visit often. We can all get absorbed with the day-to-day grind of work, a lot of career stuff. Some of the stuff that I particularly love, Dalai Lama, The Art of Happiness. Does anybody know Brene Brown? Yeah, love her. So Daring Greatly, Dare to Lead. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Frick. Like, the title sounds worse than it is, but it's really about mindful living and caring about the stuff that's important. It's not about not caring about anything. It's about finding the stuff that's really worth you caring for and caring about that. And the rest can just go in that parallel reality and do its thing, right? Why do I say America the Beautiful? I love road trips. I essentially told my boss earlier this year, I was like, okay, I'm planning a 3-week road trip, man. I'll be on and off the grid. I'll connect in. So I was like, I'm going to give you 2 options. I'm either going to quit and go work for 3 months in Spain, and I'll figure it out when I get back. Again, I don't care. Or I'm going to take a 3-week road trip out west. And his response is, didn't even think about it. He was like, do you need any more days for your road trip? I was like, no, 3 weeks is good. But we have a big road trip out to the Grand Canyon. I like nature. That's kind of like my happy place when I need a reset to go. And fortunately here, you guys have the most amazing natural settings possible. Well, from like May to October. just saying. If not, we'll host you guys down in Miami. It's cool. So, but find it and visit often, because a lot of times it just takes a quick reset to put things back in perspective when things get really, really hectic. So, just in summary, and then we'll open for a Q&A. Hopefully I've, mustered up enough interest. You guys have a few questions for me. But being a woman in cybersecurity, who's career-oriented, in a leadership role, with work-life balance, I try, in the IT world, and still rock it, is very, very possible. And I'm going to close with a quote that's on Brené Brown, and I'm not sure if you guys watched the roast on Netflix, the roast of Tom Brady. It's funny. Oh my gosh, I cracked up for almost 3 hours. But they also have this quote at the beginning when they're introducing Tom Brady, and it's by Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man or woman who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Thank you all very much for listening to me today. I am happy to take any questions that you may have. Go ahead.
Can any of my students contact you for employment or help?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That is for my LinkedIn. So if you want to just have them connect to my LinkedIn, and then there's internship stuff, there's college recruitment programs. Really, anybody can feel free to apply. All of our jobs are posted on Fortinet.com, but also on LinkedIn. So check out our career page and definitely take a look.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Go ahead.
At what point did you realize?
Go ahead.
At what point did you realize you wanted to become a leader instead of just being a worker?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Go ahead.
At what point did you realize you wanted to be a leader instead of just working for someone?
Oh, they remember that quote where Fortinet always put me into greater roles? They made me do it. Just kidding. It's not, okay. So I was always an individual contributor, and then they not literally, because I'm pretty heavy, but they pushed me. They were like, we're naming you a director. You've got to do this. But they pushed me into it. They didn't push me in with no skills or no help, but they pushed me in with a toolkit of coaching, etc. Yeah? So, excellent question. Any others? Go ahead.
So right now, I'm taking a boot camp for cybersecurity.
Good.
And my issue is right now I do have like job stability where I'm at
Right.
now,
Right.
but I'm like worried because like all the rumors are saying like in like tech, it's not as secure, it's not as stable, lots of people are losing their jobs. So how can I kind of like overcome that fear of just like getting my foot in the door and like starting?
I love that question. So technology, it's an ebb and flow. So you're going to have periods where companies are doing a lot of hiring, and then they're going to cut back, right? Two things. Get on at one of the expansion points and make your mark, right? The probabilities once you've gone in and made your mark and showing your worth that you're going to be made redundant, it's not likely. But if that does happen, hang on, because it gets better. I was laid off. Scary moment, right? When I was saying that, well, I was laid off, but that also, every gray cloud has a silver lining. That was how I ended up in cybersecurity. If I hadn't had been laid off from that job, I don't want to say never, but that probability would have been much lower. So it's only now that I look back and I'm like, yeah, thank God that happened. But when I was going through it, it was a hot mess. I was a hot mess, but I get it. But don't be afraid of tech because of the moment it's going through right now. It's temporary because you're going to see a big expansion again, right? So that's my advice to you, those 2 points, yeah? Making your mark once you're in, and also, if it does happen, don't panic, it's temporary, right? You'll figure out something else in the interim. Anybody else? All right, I'm being instructed to wrap up today, so do you want to have another question?
Yeah, but I can ask it to individually.
Okay, well, I'll be here all day. If anybody wants to have a sidebar conversation, I'm happy to do so. Thank you guys for listening to me. Appreciate it. All right. Hi.